Yesterday's conversation, Streakers, was a great one with Jamie. She and I talked a little bit about being comfortable with uncomfortable, and how I disagreed with that and don't get comfortable with being uncomfortable. We had a dynamic conversation about that. I received in my email inbox today a article from Kevin Eikenberry, Kevin Eikenberry, and it's titled Influence versus Motivation. This is what I want to talk to you about today, so let's start streaking. I want to read for you the article that I had from Kevin, and he does a great job of sending out a newsletter. I've subscribed to his newsletter, and I get these once a week or so, and they always have an interesting topic. This one caught my attention because the whole idea of motivation versus influence is something that I look at quite a bit in regards to motivating yourself to do something versus influence. And I know that he's going to be talking about this in relation to a team or leading a team of people. I'll also apply it in a couple of different areas. What I want to do first, though, is read the article. And then after I've read the article, we'll have a little bit of a discussion about it. Is that okay? Hopefully it is. Here we go. By Kevin Eikenberry, and this is via LinkedIn. So I've subscribed to his newsletter on LinkedIn. He says, and I quote, "It happened yesterday. And it happens nearly every time I am training a group of leaders. Many will say they want to learn how to motivate their team members. I certainly understand the goal and purpose for the desire, but I think it is short-sighted and perhaps suboptimal. I suggest a different approach, one focused on influence versus motivation." How can I get more motivation? That's the question that he asks. And then now let's go into the answer that he's writing here. Motivation, when framed in the leadership or organizational perspective, often focuses on external motivations. The question is, what can we do that will motivate others? And that is usually where the goal of those leaders in a workshop comes from. While this carrot and stick approach to motivation can work, it is limiting. It puts the focus on what we can or must do to get others to do something. Another, less obvious, but more powerful source of motivation is internal or intrinsic motivation. We can't see those motivations in others directly since they are internally sourced. But when people follow that internal compass, their motivation is stronger, longer. If you want to understand those big internal motivators, consider the work of my friend and motivation expert, Susan Fowler. She summarizes our internal motivations as choice, connection, and competence. We are motivated when we see we have agency or the ability to choose our path. Generally speaking, the more choices, the better. We are motivated when we are connected to others and something valuable. Choices and connections motivate us to build our competence and skills at things, regardless of what they might be. If we focus on those more powerful and lasting internal motivations, we can be more successful, but it isn't as easy as providing carrots or warning of sticks. Enter influence. Leaders become more influential when they find ways to help people get the things they need: choice, connection, and competence. As we help people find, source, and use those things, they will be self-motivated. Influence is something we do with people, not for them or to them. Focus on helping people make more productive, safe, and useful choices rather than providing external motivators. This simple shift changes our success rate and lasting impact as a leader. The short answer to the influence versus motivation question: focus on building your ability to influence more than forcing, pushing, or guiding people with external motivators. End of the article. As you listened to that and thought about it, what were some of the different things that you were thinking? Let me tell you where I went as far as the thoughts that I had. And by the way, this works across the board. I know that this is set in more of a professional setting. However, it not only is professional, but it also works in parenting. when you look at leading versus dictating, and that is one of the areas here that Kevin is so eloquently pointing out, the opportunity for people to choose motivates them even greater than does telling them or limiting their choices or directing them. What I saw were a couple of different things as far as influence versus motivation. One of the areas that I wanted to go back to is this whole idea of the internal or intrinsic versus external. One of the things that he says is that it's very difficult, and I do agree with him here, to be able to see internal or intrinsic motivation. You don't see it. You see the external, but you don't see the internal. Enter streaking. This is where internal really does start to come out, because what you're setting streaks on are those things that are behaviors or actions that are internally motivated. You're looking at who it is you want to be, and then what you're doing is setting streaks or actions to become that person. Those are the streak is the external manifestation of the internal or intrinsic motivation. I am motivated to be a writer or to produce podcasts or to be a person of influence. And therefore, what am I doing on a regular basis in order to become that person? I think about it in any discipline, in any profession, whatever it is, the internal motivation is manifested by the streak. Each of your streaks should be and are most effective if they're aligned with who you're trying to become. As a leader, when you're leading other people, if you want to become an effective leader, what are some of the streaks that you'll set in order to become that effective leader? One might be to do an activity for the people you lead, at least one activity every day. Now, you might say to me, well, Jeff, that seems pretty hard to do. In actuality, doing an activity can be anything from writing them a simple note, sending them a simple text, thinking about them, taking an opportunity to, one of the things that I do is pray for that particular individual. Whatever it is, as a leader, having that person in your thoughts and on your mind and doing an activity every single day for at least one person who you lead will make a massive difference in your life and in their life. It's an opportunity, again, to have something that is intrinsic, manifested through the streak, which is external, which you can see, count, and move forward with. The influence comes when you're able to help others to be able to, as Kevin says here, have choice and make the best choices possible. I'm influencing those choices. I am not looking for that external motivation of the carrot and the stick. I am looking to help individuals develop internally what it is they want to do in order to become the person who they want to become. In the Streaking book, we'll just pull it off the shelf here, our good friend Chris McChesney, who wrote the 4 Disciplines of Execution, wrote the foreword to the Streaking book. In this foreword, one of the things that he says, and I really like this, let's see here, let me just go to it real quickly here as you look at the foreword. And he says, got to go to it. As human beings, we aren't built for discipline and consistency. We are usually undisciplined and inconsistent. However, consistency is a primary key to not only excellence, but also to becoming who you want to be, or what I will call self-creation. Many people in life, many of the leaders with whom I have worked, have achieved phenomenal things through being consistent. More importantly, these people have achieved success because they deliberately chose who they wanted to become. If you are like me, you try to be consistent in things you want to do or know you should be doing in your personal and professional life. Whether we're talking about reading and writing or eating and exercising, consistency is vital to developing and improving. Being a connoisseur of execution, and he wrote the 4 Disciplines of Execution, along with Jim Hewling and Sean Covey, 3 phenomenal individuals. Let's see here. I have in the past set any number of goals to get better. Ultimately, however, after 1 or 2 weeks, maybe even a month of little or no progress, I've given up altogether, at least until the next time I felt a rush of enthusiasm to give it a go. After hundreds of failed attempts at any number of goals, I resigned myself to getting what I could get with what I had. Have you ever felt this way in your life? You know, the feeling that you should be or want to be doing something valuable consistently, and for whatever reason, you just can't do it? This was my plight as well until I realized that setting a goal was the wrong approach for what I was after. For years now, I have counseled leaders of many different types of organizations on how to set goals. I've spoken to thousands of people about the process of setting goals and how to execute them. And people from all over the world shared stories of the success they have had in reaching personal, professional, and organizational goals. The same people have often asked me, how do I sustain my success? I used to give the answer that wouldn't really convey what they needed to do. That is until I found Streakin. Streaking is about sustaining success in your personal or professional life. It's also about your self-worth. Every person has two forms of validation: intrinsic, or what you think and feel about yourself, and extrinsic, or the value you receive from what you think other people think of you. Extrinsic validation is like looking in the mirrors at a funhouse. The image reflected back to you may be interesting to look at for a moment. However, if you rely on that image as a source for your value, you will ultimately be disappointed. This gets over to what Kevin was talking about as far as intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation only lasts so long. It is where you go to get a little bit of fire, but like lighter fluid on wet logs, it burns quickly and doesn't keep the flame going, and the logs actually don't catch fire. Intrinsic, however, and this is the interesting part that Chris says here, the image reflected back may be interesting to look at for a moment. However, if you rely on that image for your source of your value, you will ultimately be disappointed. The alternative is intrinsic validation, which comes from one source: integrity with your values. When you make and keep promises to yourself, you build intrinsic value that is impervious to your circumstance or environment. Streaking provides a framework and methodology to sustain success and build an impervious self-worth. When you are streaking, you are making and keeping promises to yourself daily, weekly, and monthly about the things that matter most. The journey on which you're about to embark is one that has allowed me, a common man, to do some uncommonly awesome things. I've been testing and trying the streaking methodology, and I have been able to sustain and accomplish some amazing results. That's what Chris says in there. What I wanted to get to, and what you and I are really discussing here, is looking at it and saying, how am I motivated? As a leader, you may influence others to be motivated intrinsically. Look at what it is they want to do, who they want to become, and then do the actions and set the streaks necessary to become that person. Having the actions gives you the attitude to be able to move forward. That's really what you're doing. As you change yourself through action, that gives you the self-worth, the impervious self-worth, the confidence that you can continue forward. As you consider influence and motivation, think about it in context of not only the people who you lead, but also leading yourself, leading your family, being the person who's a great friend and an influencer, if I can use that term, an influencer in the lives of others, to think, know, and understand that they have a lot of choices to be able to become the person they want to be. And that when they choose that person they want to become, set a streak in order to become that person. If you want to learn more about streaking, you can buy the book at Barnes & Noble or at Amazon or anywhere books are sold. Also, download the Streaking app. We mentioned it yesterday, continue to mention it. Fantastic way to be able to not only mark and keep your streaks, but also to set up the what we call folders, which are really the B statements, or the who you want to become or the parts of your life. You're setting up the folders of your life that you want to have activities in. For example, my folders happen to have, I have a marriage folder, I have a professional folder, both personal folder, professional folder. I've also got a spiritual folder. All of these are areas of my life in which I want to progress and move forward. Set up your folders, put your streaks in them, do your streaks every day, share them, share your success, make that social self-improvement something that everyone has the opportunity to celebrate with you. That's in the Streaking app. If you wouldn't mind going on, giving it a rating and rating it in the App Store or at Google Play, that would be fantastic. That gets it in front of more people. Until we talk again, keep streaking.